stuff. So as I'm presenting, feel free to react or take notes in the chat or ask for questions for clarification, and I'll do my best to kind of monitor it and add some clarity wherever it makes sense to. So with that, cool. So I imagine you are here today because you are a creator or marketer who wants to write effective headlines. And we're going to cover that today. We will cover general headline advice and a reference tool to use forever. We will talk about some free tools and tricks for inspiration to help you brainstorm, ideate, and copy edit. We will also cover some new frameworks for writing effective headlines and hooks. We're going to learn how to write for different kinds of pain points. And then in the back half of this presentation, I'm going to do some teardowns of great content and basically roast myself and go back to past content I've written to say what I would do differently today because, you know, hindsight is 2020. All right, a couple more people are joining. All right. But first, why trust me? Right. Well, I have written such hits as, is blockchain good or bad for the environment? Yes. Your April Fool's Day prank sucks. And 8 counterintuitive marketing strategies that actually work. All right, not groundbreaking, right? But maybe that's kind of the point. There's a lot of content out there, and your headline doesn't need to be your magnum opus, right? It can just be good. It can just be pretty effective. And aside from, And aside from those headlines, I'm a content creator, longtime marketer, and I'm the VP of marketing for audience research startup SparkToro. And also, I'm just a persistent warrior who never stops thinking about content. What a joy to be me. Let's start here. So I think most of you are probably here because I tweeted this graphic earlier this week. This is NPR's headline writing advice. And this is something that I love to reference every time, really, that I write a headline. So let's just talk through it. The first one is, a great headline is specific. So pretend an elevator door is shutting and you want to tell someone on the other side about a story. This exercise will help you think of headlines that get right to the point and aren't vague. It's also easy to understand. People will likely see your headline while scanning social media on their phone, so keep it simple. If it's long and confusing, they'll likely move on to something else after a couple seconds. It leads to a reaction. So imagine someone seeing your headline for the first time. How are they going to react? Curious, surprised, happy, sad? It's not overly clever. So just be cautious of the overly clever headline. Creativity is good and you want your headline to stand out, but be careful you're not distracting people with a pun or anything like that. And then finally, this one's a really hard one. It captures the spirit of the story. So the story or the piece as a whole, is it happy or uplifting? Is it serious or is it an essay? It needs to kind of match the tone of the headline. So let's next get into a couple of exercises and sort of prompts to kind of enhance your understanding of the NPR writing guide. So the first one, the elevator one, this one's kind of the obvious one, right? So just think of it as like the elevator door is closing and you have 10 seconds to make your point. I think this is kind of hard to do when you like simply imagine it. I think it's easier to actually try to do the exercise. So just try saying it out loud. Sometimes I do this by recording a voice memo or even just recording something on Zoom. Like I kind of, in a sense, it kind of feels like I'm preparing for a webinar and I'm trying to get to the point quickly. Or you could also just make a transcript in otter.ai, one of those AI transcription tools. If you record in it, it'll then generate a transcript for you. So sometimes I even like to write some of my first drafts in this way because saying it out loud kind of forces me to get to the point quickly. And sometimes it kind of forces me into an outline. Like if I'm thinking about writing a post and I say, oh, this is what this post is about. It's going to be about headlines and hooks. Here are the things that you need for an effective headline, hook, and conclusion. And then I kind of naturally force myself into some kind of outline. And I find that helpful. A couple more people are joining. All right. All right, it's clear and not overly clever. So something I like to do is I draft a headline, or if I think of many of them, draft several headlines, and then I just leave for an hour. Like I try to do something else. Maybe I walk away from my computer if I'm able to, and I come back after I've just kind of had a true break from it. Even better if I can come back the next day and then skim it. And then by then I have a short attention span or short memory maybe, but by the time I come back to it, I'm like, what, who wrote that? Who would say that? But something similar might be helpful for you. Tap into an emotional reaction. So this is a fun one if you think about it in terms of emojis, right? So this is sort of the Sean Puri writing tip, right? When you think about different kinds of emojis, like the laughing emoji, LOL, you could use like a confused emoji, like the WTF, things like that. Like how can you kind of tap into an emoji reaction? And then finally, the whole capture the spirit of the story. Think about the tone and the call to action of your content. Does the headline reflect that? So maybe it's, if you think about the overall point you want to make, or maybe if you think about the conclusion or call to action, that can help you go back to the headline. And then now, all right, as for ongoing inspiration, the power of Google autocomplete. So try Googling what you would search for if you were a reader looking for your own article. So this might even just inspire some additional bullet points to include in the actual blog post or the actual post itself. So here's an autocomplete of how to write headline, right? So then the autocompletes are on LinkedIn for resume, in AP style, journalism, Google Ads, blogs. These might inform how I might approach the overall piece, and it might inform how I think about what the headline should be like. Here's another tool that I really like. This is called answerthepublic.com. So it's a free tool. I think they have a paid offering, but you can do a lot of this for free. Type in the keyword or topic you're writing about, and then see all the what, where, when, hi, wow, how, who questions that people are searching for. So it gives you a whole wheel of different kinds of headlines or topics. This will give you kind of a sense of what people are searching for. So it's sort of like Google autocomplete, but extra. And then finally, we also have, and I think this is our last free tool, hemingwayapp.com. Some of you might already know this, but I find it super helpful. It's completely free. When you can even draft in here, but I usually just copy and paste things. It flags your adverbs, passive voice, complex phrasing, and hard to read sentences. And then finally, it estimates your Flesch Kincaid grade level for your writing. So the average American adult reads around a fifth grade level. So I generally shoot for that. And if it's even simpler, then great. Something I do is, in this example, in the screenshot, I dropped in one of my Twitter threads, and it just kind of shows like where I have adverbs. See, when I did this the first time, I had maybe passive voice or phrases that were a little bit too complex. But I run my threads through this because I just think it makes it a little bit more accessible to people. And then some paid tools. So this is more like, if these tools are kind of already in your tech stack, like at work, this might be helpful. So this is from Ahrefs. This is a screenshot from Ahrefs, the keyword research SEO tool. This will show you, if you type in your keyword, you'll get things like keyword difficulty, search volume, all that stuff. But you'll also get here some keyword ideas. So some suggested questions or terms to also rank for. This might help inform how you would write the headline, or what you would cover in the given topic. And then another tool that I really like, and this one's newer, this is BuzzSumo's content ideas generator. So this, it's one of my favorite new tools. This will show you this week's top and shared linked content of a given topic. So I'm actually working on a piece about buyer personas right now for work. And so I typed it in here, and then I got a couple of popular link to content. So I'm obviously not going to copy these, but this will give me some insight into what might be top of mind for the audience of marketers that I'm targeting, with respect to buyer personas. And so this also just gives me a starting point for some research, right? If I'm going to write this piece, I do want to read some of the most up-to-date content on the topic. And then finally, a couple frameworks of my own. So let's start with the top line goal. What is even the point of a headline and hook, right? The point of your headline is to get people to click. And the goal of your hook is to get people to keep reading. So keep in mind, the terms headlines and hooks are fairly broad here, right? A headline classically refers to the headline of an article, and the hook is the intro, but it can also refer to email, right? The headline can be your subject line. The hook can be the intro text. Even thinking about video, the headline can be the name of your YouTube video, but the hook is what you say in the first 3 to 5 seconds. And then finally, if it's Twitter, and maybe it's a thread, the headline and hook are kind of one and the same, or maybe the hook is at least extended to the second tweet. So perhaps put more succinctly, the job of each line of text is to get people to the next line of text. And by the way, I'm pretty sure this is paraphrased from something else. I just can't find the original source. It's probably David Ogilvy. I'm not sure, so I didn't make this up, but it really helps me. And finally, I think there are only really about 5 types of content that you create. And by the way, if you think of a 6th one that I have not covered here, by all means, drop it in the chat and I can revise this slide deck for next time. But here are the 5 that I've basically homed in on. New information. So if you're writing a piece of content, it might be that you are bringing forth brand new information. Maybe it's a report that you did, some data you pulled, or an idea you invented. Naming the unnamed. So this is giving a name to a maybe commonly felt problem, or a common practice that people are already doing. So naming the unnamed. Third one, tutorial. So teaching someone how to do something, a how-to guide, a comprehensive guide to doing something. Or it's a list, right? You're curating a list or creating a listicle that is you showing your discernment or curation skills. Or finally, it's a spiky point of view. So this is from, marketer and creator Wes Cow, the co-founder of Maven. Spiky point of view. This is the hill that you're willing to die on, a defensible point, something that's an idea that's worth fighting for. And then, so the way I think about these are, I think, the 5 categories really of content that you'll be creating. I think about it as connect the headline to a pain point, because I think that it's more helpful to basically think about these things as they're all different kinds of problems that you're solving by creating the content that you've created. And if you think about the problem that you're solving, it might help you create the headline and hook. So if it's brand new information, why does the reader need this new information? So I think this is sort of reflective of a common problem that I've seen, experienced as a writer, which is you have brand new information and you think, this is new, people want this. Like, of course they want it because it's new and novel. But the thing that sometimes people forget, myself included, is why does the reader need this? What's in it for them? Naming the unnamed. Can you give a name to a commonly felt problem? Can you give a name to a commonly used best practice? Giving that, helping people, identify a certain feeling, those kinds of things, that can be really effective for a headline. Oh, and by the way, who's really good at naming the unnamed? Writer David Perell, right? He has a whole thing about creating your own coined phrase. And a lot of his articles or essays have some kind of coined phrase, right? The one that I'm thinking about right now, just off the top of my head, is he has this whole concept of coffee mode versus beer mode in creativity, right? Like beer mode is when you're being creative and brainstorming ideas, what you do at happy hour. Coffee mode is when you are alert, getting the job done, right? Like getting the task done, getting out your ideas, refining stuff. So I think that's a good example of like naming the unnamed, right? Tutorial, right? So what painful problem are you erasing by teaching this, right? It's not even just how to do blank, right? How to write a headline, that could be helpful, but if I wrote a post called how to write a headline, I don't think any of you would read it. I wouldn't read it. I'd fall asleep writing it. It would be like if you wanted to eliminate a painful problem, it might be something like how to write headlines people will actually read, how to write headlines to get people to actually click, how to write a YouTube headline that gets people to keep watching, stuff like that. For list, think about what does this list help them achieve? Or maybe how much time are you saving the reader? It could be something like 20, 20 taco shops or 20 taquerias to go to, so you don't have to spend time on Yelp, things like that. And then finally, for spiky point of view, right? This is the, I talked about hill you're willing to die on. Could also think about it as what little known solution are you providing? What problem are you shedding light on? So think about how all these questions, all these sort of prompts for these headlines focus on problems you're eliminating or pain points you're eliminating, solutions you're providing, time that you're helping someone save, all that good stuff. And then now let's get into hooks. Honestly, I'm out of frameworks because past a certain point, I really think it's just best to look at good writing and then just analyze what is working about that. So that is what we will do next. So now a hook builds upon the headline and it gives away just enough that the reader wants more. So now we're going to go through several examples of great headlines and hooks, and I'm going to call out the sort of aha moments. All right, I have to first give a shout out to my boss, Rand Fishkin. For those who don't know, Rand was the first person to codify or teach SEO best practices. So he's been blogging for a really long time, and he's really dang good at it. Because I don't know how he generates repeatable insights, through all these years. And here's a closer look at one of my favorite recent blog posts of his. So influence maps, the best marketing framework you've never heard of. What is notable about this? Well, the best, right? So there's some kind of superlative here that kind of gives something. And you've never heard of. That's I've never heard of this, then I need to read this. Now, the thing is, like, if you're going to say the best and never heard of, you need to deliver on that, right? Like it needs to be like comprehensive or brand new or novel in some way. And in this case, it's this concept called influence maps for people in marketing or people who are creators. So it's probably completely new. I think it's safe to say that this is something that really most people haven't heard of. And then as far as the hook goes, so he taps into some emotions here, right? When you find a tool that massively improves your work's effectiveness, there are two natural responses. One, this is amazing, it's going to save me so much heartache. Or two, WTF, why didn't anyone tell me about this before? And that's exactly how I felt when I stumbled across the behavioral design field's influence map framework. So delivers on this headline. You got to keep reading, right? You can search for this on the SparkToro blog if you're interested. Next one. This comes from one of my favorite writers, Sarah Campbell. She writes a great Substack called Tiny Revolution. So check it out if you're interested. But I really like this because this is so simple and just so beautiful to me. This is the headline. It's time to underthink it. Love it. Underthink it? What do you mean underthink? Already it's, counterintuitive or counter narrative in some way. My friends and I joke that the pandemic has driven everyone insane in their own specific ways, ourselves included. But here's one way I've noticed the culture has gone insane. we are overthinking everything. So this is where it really, it connects directly with the headline. It's all in the intro, and I'm already hooked in, and I got to read the rest of it. So great post. A third one here. I think this is my third example, my last example of an article, and then we have a couple of threads to go through. Another favorite creator, Dan Renzi. He runs Trapital, which is a newsletter and podcast that covers the business of hip hop. And this is my favorite post of his. It's called The Outcast Edge. So even just that, I mean, personally, I was already captivated because I'm an Outcast fan. So I already was like, oh, I know Outcast. I love them. I really want to read this. But even if you don't know Outcast, maybe you don't. Maybe you'd be like, huh, who's this? Right. And he also has a subheadline here, which I think is interesting. Here's the subheadline: How slept on trends build a following, slowly rise to the top, and maintain their unique edge. So this works whether or not you know or love Outcast. I think this is already like, ooh, I want to read this. Interesting. And then here's like the intro chunk. I'm not going to read all this to you because you don't want to hear me read this, but he sets the stage for East Coast boom bap and West Coast G-funk, talks about Outkast, who they are, some of their early, kind of the early intro of Outkast. And then here's where I felt really captivated. But things changed after the 1995 Source Awards. So this is where, I mean, I was already in, but this was the aha moment of, oh, what changed? And it kind of builds tension here. It's just a really good, really, really good article. Just one of my favorites. And then finally, we have a couple of Twitter threads that I think are fun. Caitlin Burgoyne, one of my favorite marketers and writers online. I've spent 1,500 plus hours learning about cognitive biases and heuristics, AKA the stuff that drives your customers to buy. Here are the top 19 concepts that marketers need to know. I think we all want to know this, right? It has over 6,000 likes. Who wouldn't want to read this? But here's what stands out to me as the like, ooh, I really like all this. So 1,500 plus hours. Caitlin is an extremely like talented, experienced marketer who focuses on buyer psychology, right? She's done a lot of research on this, has talked to a lot of experts and actual psychologists. And I mean, part of it is me personally, I know her and I know that she actually does all this stuff. So 1,500 hours kind of leans into credibility. And it's true. Also, drives your customers to buy. That's like, as a marketer or salesperson or founder, that's the thing that you're like, I need to know this, right? I need to know this for my business. And then top 19 concepts. Cool. So I know it's going to be 19. It's finite. There's curation involved. She put a lot of thought into this. And marketers need to know I'm a marketer. So I felt seen in that. So this was a really great hook. You can see got awesome engagement. And then, by the way, I think this thread, I think it led to like hundreds of email subscribers for her. So awesome. Good for her. And this other hook. So this is from Joanne Coffey. I emailed two TikTok influencers with a combined 500,000 plus following, and they both responded within 8 minutes. Each influencer agreed to give us free features. Here's what I did. So who doesn't want to read this, right? So what is great about this? TikTok influencers. I mean, I think this is interesting because, TikTok is still pretty new. Not everyone has mastered it. Marketers are still figuring it out, all that good stuff. So that already has some level of novelty. 500,000 plus following. So, okay. So she emailed actual influencers who have a lot of reach, and they both replied within 8 minutes. Oh, it actually worked. And then free features. This was like what she got out of the exchange. And, by extension, what you as a reader, marketer can also possibly learn, stand to gain from this if you take her advice. Now, as helpful as it is to learn about great writing, it is just as helpful to reflect on our own past writings that are not so good. Hindsight is 2020, and your best editor will always be you. You are the only one that has the full context for what it is you're trying to convey. And so with that, I'm going to go back to my past content over the past maybe year or so and just point out like what I should have done differently, or like why I think things didn't land, or even just like figuring out like why didn't this go viral the way that I had hoped, right? So the first one, this one got it got, good amount of likes, but this didn't like get crazy like engagement. Um, I have years of marketing experience, B2B, D2C, and B2C, with a focus in content communications, events, and product marketing. But this is my second career. Here's how I pivoted and how others can learn too. Thread. This is like fine, right? I think it's okay. But here's what sucks. I think the opening sentence is directionally good. Like it establishes some kind of credibility, but honestly, it's long and it's like kind of boring. I kind of tuned out, like content communicator, blah, 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 blah. Like that's just too much, I think. And I don't think anyone reading this needs to know that level of detail just within the first tweet. Oh, okay. So that's how I would do that differently. And then the meat of this Twitter thread, I am like almost embarrassed to show it. We're not going to read this. You can look it up later if you want to. But look how long that is. And that's just the intro. It took me 6 tweets to get to something truly useful and actionable for the reader, which is a sort of cold outreach template. So like 5 tweets of me just blathering on about myself, that was just like too much. I'm surprised that it even got that many likes, to be totally honest with you, because this is just too much. I don't know. I wouldn't read this about myself today. And I'm the one who wrote it. The next one. This one kind of bummed me out because I worked really, really hard on this thread. It took me like hours to write. I have a couple of blog posts on it. It took me forever to write those 2. There's one piece of content that's sure to yield a positive ROI, a case study. Here's the secret sauce that most marketers forget. I really thought people would really love this. I was hoping it would get like thousands of likes. It did not. Why do I think that it didn't? I think yield a positive ROI is too jargony. Like it's kind of hard to skim. Unless you always speak that language, like that isn't really what's going to grab you. Maybe I should have said something just simpler, like one piece of content that's sure to, move your business forward or drive your business, something like that, or like lead to revenue growth, or that's sure to increase revenue, something that's just a more active voice and just more direct and easier to understand. And case study. I don't know, maybe the term case study is kind of boring. Maybe I shouldn't have said case study in the intro. Maybe it should have just been like one piece of content that's sure to grow your business. Maybe that should have just been the hook. Maybe I should have just ended it there and then kept going with the actual actionable content. And then finally, I have an article, a blog post to call out what I would have done differently. My Mother's Day message to you. Here's a short story about the birth of my son, suggestions for how you can help a mom, and my message to you, even though I'm not your mom. So I think it's interesting that the headline itself, that it says to you, like my Mother's Day message to you, but it's not clear why you should care. Like you might see this and be like, I don't care. I don't know you. So that's fair. Also, this like phrasing here in the middle, how you can help a mom, I don't think it really grabs the reader. Why should someone care about helping a mom? Like, what does that even mean, right? I think if you're not really primed for this, you might not care. You might not know, right? And then in the hook, the first couple of, paragraphs, it's the 3rd year that I get to be a Mother's Day celebrant, but really I just have something to say to you. For starters, I like to share the short story of my son's birth because most birth stories still aren't normalized. Moms tend to get a mixed bag of tell me all the gory details and ew, no one needs to hear that. And I'm ending it on a message to you, how you can help a mom in your life and what your mom thinks about you or should think about you. I think it's okay. I think it's nice, but it's not great. I think I'd be overall better off cutting this in half, like, and just getting into the story itself. So the first sentence or first line I have here, I think this is kind of interesting that it's my Mother's Day message, but a message for you. Second one, the second paragraph, I stand by this as a thought, like I still believe in it, but I think it's still kind of unclear why the reader should care. And then here in the third paragraph, the ending and a message to you, it's redundant with the first paragraph, so I shouldn't have done that. And what your mom thinks about you or should think about you, I think it's hard to read, like the intent. I just need to rewrite that because I think the intention is nice, but it's still like kind of muddy. The point doesn't really hit home. I don't know, and it's kind of boring. So that's what I would do differently. I would shorten this, make it a little bit punchier, tap into some emotions a little bit better, and get straight to the point. So I don't know if you got this in the emails, like the confirmation emails for this event, but if you have, we're welcome to bring a piece of writing that you want feedback on. If anyone wants to bring something forth, happy to give you some loving feedback and I won't embarrass you. But if anyone has that, we can talk about that next. Because I just have one last slide, my thank you slide, for like next steps, calls to action, all that good stuff. If you have not subscribed and you want to check out more of my writing, more of my approach to marketing and creativity, I have a now weekly newsletter. It was bi-weekly or every other week for a while, the menu. So it's on my personal site, amandanat.com/subscribe. For my day job, got to promote my employer. Check out SparkToro. We have a bunch of really awesome free tools like our fake follower Twitter audit, Spark Score, so you can gauge engagement of any Twitter account, or you can create a free SparkToro account and just do your own audience research. You get 5 free queries every month, but if you run out, you can always email me, amanda@sparktoro.com, and we will give you some free searches. And then finally, I teach a content marketing course. It's a sort of intermediate level content or a marketing course. If you want to learn more about my approach to content creation and marketing strategy, the next cohort is next month. Find the landing page on Maven if you care. Class starts on May 23rd. So hope you can join us. And if you would like a loving roast or questions just in general, happy to answer any and all questions. Yeah. Let's see, how will we do this? Drop something in the chat and then, you can also raise your hand. Yay. Let me stop sharing my screen so I can get my controls again. Ronnie. Okay. All right, Ronnie, you're up. Where are you?
I don't know where I am on your screen, but here I am. Voice. I'm curious to know, like, how many headlines do you typically write for a piece, and are there times when you go even further than your typical average number, and are there times when you're like, progress over perfection, and how do you make those decisions?
Yeah, great question. I write at least 3. If I can write like 5, like just get it all out of my system, then I will. Even if I know, like, even if I have what I know is a crappy idea, I type it out anyway, just to get it out of my brain. And that helps because like once you've like written out the bad idea, you get cool, I absolve you, go away. So there's that. With the progress over perfection, that definitely resonates. I think there are a couple of things you can still lean on as like overall sort of templated headlines. Like one that I just sort of partially gave up on and was like, I just need to ship this, was a blog post that I wrote for SparkToro called The Case for Permissionless Co-Marketing. Like I thought permissionless co-marketing was interesting. I'm like, oh, I think that like this is a coined phrase. I think people will kind of grok this, but like I don't know what else to say about it. Like permissionless co-marketing, do this cool thing, So I kind of counted on the fact that it's phrasing that doesn't already exist. And I didn't want to muddy up the headline by making it something like, here's why you need to do permissionless co-marketing today, right? That's just like too long. I felt I was kind of counting on the fact that that was novel enough that all I needed was the case for this. I think listicles or, mentioning a number also makes it a little bit easier to write the headline. 3 ways to do X to get Y outcome. Like that is kind of a clean way to just lean on something and get it out there. And yeah, it might also help to run your headlines through like Hemingway app just to make sure you're, keeping it in active voice with like simple phrasing. But yeah, hope that helps. There's a question here. I'll go through some of the questions on the chat. Does a homepage count for Stephen's questions about homepages? If you're comfortable unmuting, Stephen, what do you mean by homepage?
Oh, my homepage. I have a homepage for the website, and
Yeah.
basically I have a client avatar. And I was like, oh, does this even like speak to the person that I think it does within the few seconds of them navigating to it? It's technically writing. I always rewrite it.
Yeah. I mean, I think for homepages, like that's the best opportunity to really, really get into direct response copywriting. So I like for the headlines in that top hero text in a homepage to speak to a really painful problem or highly sought out for solution that like people like feel that emotion. And it gets to the point quickly. We're still playing around with it ourselves at SparkToro. We're actually going to try some new copy. I think right now we have forget manual surveys or something. We think maybe it's too complicated. We're going to try something a little bit simpler, but yeah. And asked, how do you feel about emojis and headlines or subject lines? So I love emojis in general, but I don't think they're great in headlines. The thing that I would think about is that they're not accessible to people with screen readers. So it would be weird for somebody using a screen reader to hear a headline that's like crying, laughing emoji, why you need to do this thing, like it would just be awkward to hear. So I would think about emojis as being additive to something and not part of the requirement for understanding the context. That makes sense. Allison asked, when a Twitter thread flops, do you workshop it a bit, then release it back into the Twitter wilds? I have, and I think more people should do this. Yeah. I think if I have not, I was just sort of like over it and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to move on. But I do think it's a good idea, especially if you have an idea that you're passionate about, that you're like, I really want to get this idea out here. Like, I know it's great, but this thread didn't perform well. I would potentially delete it and then workshop it again and then repost it again, like at least a week later, if not a little bit longer, because Twitter will penalize duplicate content, right? So I would think about that. I want to get to a hand raised. Camilla, if you want to unmute and ask your question. Oh no, I think your audio is not working. Okay. Well,
yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I was mute, but from the microphone itself. I write a lot about marketing in general, but sometimes I get to really hard things to explain. For example, when you're writing what you said about ROI, for example, is like a common problem I have. So what would you recommend when you're writing, for example, like trying to explain something to your audience that is really hard, and maybe they won't really like Google that directly, when they don't know how to solve the problem, they maybe don't even know the problem, and you're already writing about the solution. Like, what would you do in that sort of cases? I don't know if that was a little hard to explain.
No, I get it.
But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, whenever I struggle to explain a concept because I feel like it's too technical or just, it feels a little bit too advanced, I like to just make up examples. like make up a story. I mean, if you have a real example to use, even better, of course, but you can also do like a fictionalized take, whether maybe it's something like, you're a marketer. Imagine you spent, all this time doing customer research. You spent 10 hours talking to customers, 12 hours collating all your notes, and you still don't know what to do with the data. Here's what you should do instead. To kind of walk someone through a fictionalized story that's grounded in truth, and then providing them with a solution that comes next.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. Krista is so kind. She's like, you can roast me. I'm going to pull up this content. Okay. I'm going to share my screen again so that you all can see. Thank you, Krista, for volunteering to be in the hot seat. Super kind of you. Okay. All right. Universal Analytics is dead. No, really. It's just been given a deprecation date. Here's what you need to know ASAP, a short thread. Well, this performed really well. It got almost 1,000 likes, so it did really, really well. And you can see my Tweemex is up. Have you guys seen Tweemex? This will show you on this tweet, it shows all the quote tweets. So it's pretty cool to see, like, someone said, this is terrible, horrible news. Okay. This is distracting, so I'll move this for now. Okay, so here's what I might do differently. I probably wouldn't use emojis because of the screen reader issue, or I would limit it to like maybe 1 or 2 emojis, like maybe just the thread emoji.
As soon as you started answering that previous question, I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to get comments on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, because I think also people can interact with the screen reader thing. Like, at least if someone is using a screen reader and they hear, here's what you need to know ASAP, a short thread emoji, right? At least that isn't like, it's not like, thumbs up sign, but the skin tone is fair, right? That would be like kind of intense for a screen reader to have to communicate. And then for the hashtags, I probably would have chosen just one hashtag, just to like, because I feel like I've seen that in opening tweets, some of the content rich stuff, like tagging a person or using a hashtag, tends to result in like lower engagement. And I think it might even just be that somebody skimming through might see someone replied and think, oh, this is not for me. They're talking to someone else. What I might do is incorporate some more of the hashtags lower in the thread. So that might be interesting. Or what I might do also is incorporate Google Analytics 4 in the hook. Might do that. But this is great, and it performed really well. And I remember this because also, Krista, no one else had said anything about the update. So it was also novel and new and awesome.
Thank you. I'll reduce my use of emojis.
Cool. All right, Cindy asked, who do you think is really good at direct response copywriting, person or brand? Who's really good? Someone I think is really, really good at it is Trung Fan. He's just a really good writer. Like, anytime his content pops up in my feed, I'm like, damn it, Trung, I need to read this. So he's really good at it. Who else is really good at this? I think Alex Garcia. I think his handle is Alex Garcia _ATX. I think that's his handle. He's really good at it too. Like whenever he writes content on Twitter, it's very like, it's active, simple sentences, like easy to read, easy to skim, easy to know what's in it for you. Those are the two that come off the top of my head. But yeah. Someone asked if this will be recorded. Yes, I'm going to put this on YouTube after this and send it to everybody who registered. Oh, someone said, we thought emojis would perform well in our email subject lines after A/B testing, and found email subject lines without had higher open rates. That's interesting. Oh, Claudio Cabrera from New York Times is really good at writing SEO /clickable content. Yeah, awesome. think of who else is really good at. Anyway, does anyone else have questions or want to raise their hand or anything? Anything at all, friends? Or any feedback? Was anything, any of the concepts I covered, was anything not that helpful or what you'd want to see more of? Also open to feedback. You could noodle on that while I look at this next question. Jewel asked, if most of the headlines on my client's blog are the typical how-to, what is, how can I entice them to shift to more engaging titles? I mean, wouldn't they object because it would mess up their existing style? This is a really good question. What I think is also really good about this question is that it's reflective of how, a lot of search optimized driven blog posts or blog strategies are, which is explaining how to do something, explaining what something is. And there absolutely is a place for that, especially if the readers or your target audience is searching for what is blank, I think that it's if people are searching for it and it's getting clicks, then it's helping people. That's how I like to see it. I'm an optimist. But shifting to more engaging titles, I would think about if you switch to a more engaging title or what you felt was an engaging title, how would the content reflect that, right? Like if the post is called, what is direct response copywriting? We'll just stick with that as an example. I don't know. Then the person clicking on that might want to know, well, what is it? Like, I don't know. I've never heard of that. Tell me all about it. What's the history of it? Who made it up? Where can I get some resources? So I wouldn't think that is ineffective. However, when you're thinking about engaging titles, you might also be thinking about how can I engage people who are better versed in this topic, like the more intermediate and advanced level audience member who they already know what direct response copywriting is. Maybe they want to know common mistakes, right? Maybe they want to know like 6 mistakes people always make in direct response copywriting. I think that's a pretty engaging title. I made it up, right? The content doesn't exist, so let's pretend it's amazing. That could be something that's engaging and that appeals more to the intermediate or advanced reader of that topic. So I guess maybe the short of it is I would think about if that engaging title matches the content. And as long as you are meeting readers where they are, like with the intention that they want. Hope that helps. All right, we have 5 minutes left. Does anyone want to maybe drop in the chat or even raise their hand and say any of their own headline or hook writing tips? Like if you have any kinds of mental models that help you, would love to hear them.